Hi guys, and welcome back. It's Al from Altruistic Channel, and tonight what I was going to bring up was the subject that's on a lot of people's minds, typically in the form of the dynamic that's going on in society with politics and organized religion and all of the stuff that's going on. That's kind of making the country divided and moreover the planet as a whole. And so at the root of most things, you will find something that I can't stand, that is usually at the bottom of most of this divisive tactic, and that would be hypocrisy. So the subject of hypocrisy is always something that I find very interesting because either people get it or they don't. So with the collective, though, here's what my issue is with hypocrisy. Other than the fact that you are essentially existing under a false pretense of what you actually believe in or what you actually do in your life. You're actually presenting yourself in another way, which makes anybody who runs into you or meets you in that context basically getting to know someone that's not real. And so that creates a whole another dimensional issue that we have to clear, because you just don't want to be honest about your shit. And so that's why we always say do your work in the collective. Do your work. As you ascend, please do what you need to do, because at the end of the day, it's for your betterment, not ours. And if anything, it just helps us as a collective unit be able to cipher through energy to figure out what energy is part of a group dynamic or what energy is specifically to a person. And you can't do that if the people don't do their actual work, right? So it becomes just problematic. But with hypocrisy, it becomes even much more magnified, because what happens is that then there becomes almost like a false dimension that exists between our reality and then the reality that you live in, because we're all looking at the elephant in the room and nobody's addressing the fucking elephant, and I'm looking at the elephant going, I'm gonna pull your fucking trunk. So instead, what we pose is that you take atonement for the fact that you don't really need to be hypocritical. At this point in life, you should probably have come to realize that no one gives a fuck what you're doing, and it's not really up to anybody's opinion what you do anyway. At the end of it, when it's all said and done, it's God or your divine power or whatever you believe spirit to be, your creator, Allah, whatever, what have you. It's between you and that deity. It has nothing to do with anybody else. Even your wife or your husband can't dictate to you what your personal processes are. So in that way, what is it that we're trying to be hypocritical of? Because there's no reason, is what I'm trying to say, anymore for us to stand behind this concept. Because what's happening is that people are then using it to even more burdensome things that follow, right? So, for example, with hypocrisy, one of the things that came about was this notion of a pure quality of something that we wanted to do for the betterment of man, and that got corrupted, and that would be the political correctness thing. Okay, so political correctness came about from hypocrisy. Basically, people that were hypocritical decided they were going to step in on behalf of people that were minorities or underrepresented and do something to prevent them from encountering those experiences anymore. Meanwhile, they were the ones carrying it out the entire time. But bygones. The point is that in and of itself, that was a pure motivation to do something great for humanity, right? What ended up happening, though, is the same hypocrites that put that into place then decided to morph it, almost like religion did to hope and spirituality, and corrupt it into something that's controllable. And so what they did is they started to tell us what we can and cannot say, and started to make everybody feel guilty into a suppressed state, where they felt like they can't be themselves anymore. And it's gotten to the point where we utilize political correctness as a way to control the population, which is not what it's intended to do. So that's what I'm talking about. When we let hypocrisy breed and breed more, it begins to morph and change into bigger and more problematic things that it's going to take longer for us to deal with. And in case you haven't noticed, the planet is already dying and we're already acting like assholes. So the last thing we need is anything more blocking us from being able to even talk to each other. And so at this point, what is happening now is that as executives and as people who are running the show, we're now beginning to see the backlash, which is that people who would never have acted in a physical way to be racist or to be whatever their particular prejudice was or bias, they would never act it out in previous terms, are now put in a position where they have to act it out because they're feeling suppressed and angry about the fact that they can't be themselves. And, we're built on freedom, yet we can't speak our truth because it might offend someone else. So you see how that went down the wrong path. We now have the opportunity to stop it and cut it at the pass. Sorry, food. I just showered too, my hair. And I'm also shiny, sorry. But the point is that as it stands, we have the opportunity to do quite a bit for humanity, and it all stems from a spiritual stance, which is kind of interesting because I never thought that I would be in a position that I would be a spiritual leader or a spiritual guru, whatever you want to call it. Just never refer to me as a guru because not my thing. Too many guru and guru. But the point is that I never expected to actually take this aspect of leadership. I've always been a strategy leader, and that's kind of where I was happy. And so this is kind of new to me. So please don't assume that I'm enjoying any of this because it's a little nerve-wracking for me. But it's what the big man wants me to do. So I do what he says. But when it comes to this, we have an opportunity here where not just helping humanity out, but helping us individually atone for our part in this process. Because had we taken responsibility and done the work earlier, we would not have any of these extra layers forming. And what ends up happening with these layers is that it begins to be processed by the younger generation that may not understand the context of where it comes from, and so then it breeds hate. So you see how it jumped from prejudice, bias to now hatred. And so that's when action comes about, and that's where the danger comes in. And so when we think in terms of spirituality and just your everyday life, there's a reason why we want them to be in tandem with the collective. Is because it does marry well enough to make you understand that there is values in your day-to-day, and you should have morals and ethics as to how you operate, because it helps the race come to terms with what it is that we actually are trying to do. And so the more that we shy away from stepping into our power, the more that we muddy the waters to a point where we are having now to backtrack quite a distance to make up the difference. And so that's kind of why I wanted to address specifically the hypocrisy thing. So at the end of the day, here's what I want everybody to understand, or anybody who's watching, everybody, I think it's like 2 people, to you. Thank you, by the way, for watching, and like, sharing, and subscribing. But when it comes to, I just passed right over. But when it comes to that, what I want you to take away from this is it is never too late to make a change for the betterment of yourself and for the path that you're walking. No one is going to be able to tell you what to do anyway, because like I've said before, God created you and you alone to walk your path. There was never going to be another soul that could understand the things that you've experienced and in terms of what you understood it to be and how you harness power out of that moment to then make yourself propel into something grander or something better. And it was specifically engineered, if you will, for you. So to that end, whenever you feel like you're at a crossroads and you feel like you're not being true to who you are, ask yourself, is this making me hypocritical? Because if so, I need to cut this off. Because it's not only just about me, but it's about my kids and it's about society. We're just going to, it's too complicated. We need to make this simpler. And so when you start to do that, because when you start to do that, I was jumping ahead, when you start to do that type of thing, you take away the ownership of just you and you start to put it into a community aspect. And many people in society have this self-deprecation thing where they find themselves to have less value than others. And so sometimes if you're in that mind frame, it's best to then think in terms of the group dynamic instead of your dynamic, because you're more inclined to be motivated to make the adjustment under the group guys. You see what I'm saying? And so with all these layers of how human beings operate and the psychological ramifications that we exist in, it's so important to really take a moment to sometimes just think about what affects society on a generalistic rule and start to break that down so that we can actually start addressing the real problems that are in that and what the real problems that are propelling these things into motion and into life. And that's it. That's all I wanted to say. So when it comes to hypocrisy, guys, just understand that there is actual danger behind hypocrisy, and it does actually produce. It is a gateway. And you know, like how they used to say that marijuana was a gateway drug to other drugs, which it wasn't. If anything, that's a gateway drug to getting chubby and not being able to see your penis, but that's about the extent of that one. But at the end of the day, this is a gateway. Once you become hypocritical in one stance, you start to find yourself a hypocrite in a lot of other ways. And so that just begins to add all these layers of falsity. So you're basically wearing a very purposeful false mask, whereas most people just wear a false mask to protect themselves. You're actively engaging yourself as an enemy, if you will. And I know that's pretty stiff, but you get what I'm trying to say. At the end of the day, let's make things as simple as possible. We have so much to work, so much ground to cover, and we have so much work to do that it's just easier if we all just get on the same page. So that's my little 2 cents on this subject. I hope you guys are having a great night. That's it for Al on Altruistic Channels. Later!